Chapter 233 to 235. This fat cat pretends to use the super Dragon Balls. Some Dragon Balls with the size of a planet that are distributed between universes 6 and 7. Which are extremely powerful, so much so that you can even ask to kill a Hacation for you, said a handsome, tall, muscular, powerful, with a tail and 3 eyes dude who came at the right moment to explain in a few seconds what that fat cat would take minutes. Oh, Broly-san, Whis and Vados said, warmly greeting the most important person in their lives, since he is the best cook they have ever known. Hello, how are you? Broly said, returning the greeting, but with less enthusiasm than Whis and Vados, since they were almost freeloaders who only wanted him for his food. Ah. Broy. Beerus and Kompa yelled with far less enthusiasm than Broly, since they were face to face with the only mortal who could beat them up. And besides, he is a fucking bastard. What's wrong, do you know him? Asked Beerus, surprised to see that his twin brother had had the same reaction as him. How is it possible? He is supposed to be in Universe 6, and that mortal can't travel between universe. Yes, of course. Whis hasn't told you anything? Said Kompa, who was partly grateful to Whis for not telling the bastard of his brother about his humiliating defeat at the hands of Broly. Something they both had in common and neither of them wanted to talk about. Of course I know them. They accused me of something very ugly years ago, which wasn't my fault, and they still haven't apologized. And regarding what I do here, it's because Bulma had told me to bring you some food. I hate when she forces me to compensate you for making you work for a month without reward. But above all, I come for you for. Especially you, Vegeta and Yam. Said Broly, quite annoyed while pointing to his least favorite science couple. Hey. Why? Goku asked, who didn't understand the reason, or anything in general. What have I done now? Vegeta protested, he was tired of always being Broly's scapegoat for everything. Why me too? Yam asked, that she wasn't used to receiving deserved punishments from Broly, since Vegeta always paid for both of them. It is more about what you haven't done. Since you are here every day training, your son Vegeta Jr., whom seems you have abandoned, spends all day at my house with my adorable bra. Except for the few times when he is with his uncle Rashi, who also seems to have invaded my tranquility with his daughter to cry saying how much he misses his wife. The rest of the time he's with me and my family. Fuck. My house has become a fucking science nursery. They practically get up, eat and have dinner and go to sleep at my house. And that's not all. Vegeta Jr. calls me dad sometimes. And that's something that I will not tolerate. Besides, he is still too young to ask my daughter for marriage. So you can start taking care of your children by yourself before I call social services, or Piccolo. Broly protested in an excessively melodramatic way, showing without complexes his facet of hyper-protective father and Vegeta hater at the same time. Guys, you are irresponsible, Goku said, very disappointed with his friends. You aren't who to talk to. Everyone shouted, and with reason. Well, leaving that aside, were you talking about a tournament? Broly asked Kompa and Vados, changing the subject to forget that his daughter liked Vegeta-san. This. I think that. Shit. I didn't take into consideration that Broly could participate in this. If he participates, Kompa said that he tried to avoid that question by all possible means. He couldn't let Broly participate in the tournament he had proposed, or else his team wouldn't have a single chance of winning. However, unfortunately for Kompa, Broly heard everything about the tournament perfectly. Although in a way Kompa had to feel lucky, since he told him, don't worry, whatever it is I'm not interested in participating. What it? Shouted Beerus, extremely disappointed since he hoped that Broly would participate and thus have the victory assured. However, the disappointment of Beerus meant the automatic happiness of Kompa, who speak openly about his tournaments again. Great. So it's decided, whoever wins the tournament will get the Super Dragon Balls. For now I only have 6, but I hope to find the one that I am missing soon, especially if I have your help, of course. If those 4 clumsy people who can barely move participate and also find the sphere that I am missing. This will be the best, I will get my wish for free and I will also be able to win my arrogant brother. Ha, I'm a genius. So you also want us to help you find the one you are missing. You are a... Beerus said, angry at having to accept new responsibilities. For having to participate in a nuisance that doesn't benefit him too much. An annoyance that he was about to reject, but... Please, Beerus-sama. With Bulma's radar we could find something like that in an instant. Come on Beerus-sama, let's have the contest. Please? Goku said, begging the cat to let him play. Do you really wish to fight in this tournament? Beerus asked, a little conditioned upon see Goku's puppy face. Of course I do. Goku said, jumping like a little child. And you three? Beerus asked to check if the others also wanted to participate. Yeah, sure. Vegeta, Yam and Ginger replied. So then it shall be. Let us partake in this thing, said Beerus, who from time to time liked to please his subjects and his brother. He was a bastard, a despot and a genocide, but deep down he's a good person. Yeah, whatever. But go find your son before he asks me to adopt him, or worse. I'll lend you a Dragon Ball's radar and a spaceship. So don't dare to waste Bulma's valuable time on you when she could use it on me. And to change the place of the earth either, create the same if you want, but don't move my house or I will kick your fucking ass compa, as I did when I was little. Broly said, once again showing how incredibly overprotective and territorial he's with his family. Did he beat you up when he was a kid? Beerus asked his brother, partly surprised, scared and above all, making fun of him even though he was also beaten recently. Oh, I see. Broly got married and had a daughter. How unexpected, said Vados, surprised by those statements. No one had informed her about it, and Whis nodded, agreeing 100% with his sister. Whatever. Let's talk about the tournament rules, said Broly, who wanted to finish this topic quickly to go home. The agreed rules were the usual ones in this franchise. Losing consciousness, surrendering, leaving the ring means defeat. You cannot kill the opponent. Weapons cannot be used. And of course doping was also prohibited. The tournament would be in a week on an unnamed planet in an intermediate dimension between Universe 6 and 7 at 10 AM. On the part of the Universe 7 team, the last member would be Piccolo, since Gohan wasn't at all interested in that stupidity. And due to Broly's protection, Beerus was unable to blackmail him into participating. During that week of waiting, our beloved Science searched for the last Super Dragon Ball, which couldn't be found, since it was located in the intermediate dimension. Broly already knew it, but he greatly enjoyed seeing how Goku and the others searched for it throughout the universe uselessly for days. However, despite this unnecessary loss of time, the four of them were able to train tirelessly for 5 days in a row in Bulma's time compressor and also in Den's time room, which he reformed to eliminate the limit of uses. Seriously, Cammy. Den has surpassed you in everything. So, the day of the tournament. Really? Except for Gohan, who has to work and take care of Pan, no one else has to do anything today? Broly protested, hinting that there were too many people here. It's Saturday, Broly. And besides, you're here too. Krillin protested, contradicting Broly's protest. You only know how to find excuses, said Broly, concluding this absurd discussion without an obvious winner or loser. Everyone took a day off to attend the event. In this select group were Whis in his role as taxi driver, Beerus, the 5 participants, the rest of the Z-Warriors, their friends and their families, and also a useless octopus who proclaimed himself the king of the universe, accompanied by a useless patrolman known as Jocko. Are we there yet? Broly said to Whis, since he was tired of waiting, and seeing that Bra and Vegeta Jr. got along so well got on his nerves. There is little left, Broly. Whis replied, with more patience than a saint. If I had known that this magic cube was so slow, I would have teleported us there directly, said Broly, showing his dissatisfaction with public transport. You only know how to complain? If you're not going to fight, don't come. Shouted Beerus, who didn't feel comfortable being in such a small space with Broly, much less when he didn't stop bothering and didn't even come to help in the tournament. Do you want Beerus to fight? Do you really want me to fight? Again? You're sure? Broly said, threatening Beerus, with an extremely forced grin. TSH. I haven't said anything. Beerus said, reading between the lines what Broly wanted to say to him. If something he learned from Goku, Vegeta, Yam and Ginger, is better not to provoke that guy. By now everyone had gotten used to this hierarchy in which Broly was at the top, Bulma by his side, Beerus below, Whis on the sidelines and everyone else below Beerus. However, the new addition to the group didn't understand what the hell was happening. Jocko, who the hell is that guy? How can he speak to the god of destruction like that? Said King Jinga, the crowned alien octopus who was supposedly the king of the universe now that Frieza was dead, or something like that. King Jinga. Don't go near or talk to that monster. I assure you, it's for the best, Jocko said, giving the universe's most important warning, one he couldn't give himself decades ago. And after a few minutes of travel in which each one did what they wanted, they reached the planet of the tournament, from which they could see the Super Dragon Ball. So those are the Super Dragon Ball? They are huge. Everyone said, very surprised, especially those who were already surprised to see the disparity in size between the Dragon Balls of Earth and Namek. They expected their size to be much larger than Namek's, but they never imagined something like these. Those Dragon Balls were as big as a small planet. Badge, I've seen them bigger, said Broly, not at all impressed. His Dragon Ball were bigger. Yes, whatever you say, said the others, who were already tired of his boasting, especially after enduring him the whole trip. I'm serious, Broly replied, but not giving more details. Moreover, when landing on the planet/asteroid there were already people waiting for them, such as Kampa, who as a good host went to receive them. Ah, so you really came? I was starting to think you'd chickened out, said Kampa, as irritable as ever. Shut up, Kampa. Let's finish this as soon as possible, I don't have all day for your nonsense, Beerus said, who was quite irritated after enduring Broly's irritating attitude for a quarter of an hour. The least he wanted was to also have to bear his brothers. Do what? You spent the years sleeping, Kampa answered. But they weren't the only gods aboard that planet. UOH. What are you doing here, Kaioshin-sama? Goku said, excited to see familiar faces, like the useless gods that came to Earth a few years ago. And Shin and Kibito were also happy to see Goku, the only pure soul among the Saiyans they had ever met, not counting his son. Well, Goku-san. It's been a while, hasn't it? Que tal habeas estado tras? HRM? Hey! Are you guys the 6th universe, Kaioshin-sama? Goku said, who interrupted Shin's warm reunion speech to focus on the new faces. In this case, two guys who dressed almost the same as Shin and Kibito had earrings like them and also looked alike, although uglier. However, before the Kaioshins from Universe 6 could be surprised and even upset by the confidence with which Goku addressed them and his disrespectful attitude. That's right, Goku, they are. How long without seeing you, useless John? They shit with fear upon see that their greatest nightmare had grown, appeared behind them and leaned on their shoulders in a very disturbing and dark way. Broly Fua and his assistant shouted in deep terror upon see that they were surrounded by Broly's rocky arms and that his face was a few inches from theirs. A head from which a disturbing and threatening third eye protruded, a third eye that they would never forget in their lives. Do you know them, Broly? Goku asked, asking the obvious. Yes, of course, we are old friends, Broly replied happily as he embraced the two Kakishin with his arms effusively, who seemed to be praying to some higher entity to take pity on their souls. Well, it doesn't seem like they are. Goku replied upon see that those two Kaioishin were trembling with fear and were also totally pale, as if they were sheets of paper. Nonsense. Of course we are. Right? Broly insisted as if he were a dangerous and well-backed mobster catching red-handed by the police while trying to extort money from some poor merchants. Yes. We are. Fua and his assistant answered as they looked at the ground, afraid of making eye contact with someone. That's what I thought. Anyway, let's sit down. Nice earrings, by the way, Broly said, saying goodbye to Fua and his lackey while touching Fua's new earrings, since the old ones were stolen by him. And once Broly sat with his family and began to pay more attention to his wife and daughter than to them. Shin asked his brothers from another universe, have you also suffered at his hands? More than you could imagine, Fua replied while wiping the cold sweat that fell from all parts of his body. If you only knew. Shin replied, who thought he could imagine what they had been through. What does Broly have against the gods? I don't understand, Piccolo asked himself, who didn't miss a single detail of that uncomfortable meeting. And of course in that place there were more mortals from Universe 6 who also had conversations with each other. This tournament reminds me the Broly tournament we have on our planet Sarada, said an anonymous Saiyan from the 6th universe of the many who were in the tournament. Since Broly taught them to use the Super Saiyan, they basically became the most powerful race in the universe. Kampa's team currently consisted of Hit, Meralman, and Saiyans. Some rules are different, like the rule that allows you to use weapons in the shape of Broly. But except for everything else it is almost the same, answered Kaba, the ex-champion of that tournament. Really? Some said while looking indignantly at Broly for explanations. Are you surprised that I have business in others in other universes? Come on, these Saiyans have fun at my tournaments. Broly answered while avoiding the astonished gazes of the Saiyans of Universe 6. After Broly signed autographs, the non-participants sat in the stands and the participants moved to the ring where the toughest challenge awaited them. An challenge that even the greatest fighters could be unable to overcome. An elementary level written exam. Broly, are you sure you don't want to participate? Asked C-18, who didn't understand why he didn't participate and humiliated them all. The Broly he knew loves being the center of attention. In a stupid tournament for the benefit of idiot cats in which only weaklings participate? No thanks, I prefer to sleep. Broly answered, despising his universe and also the opposite while he materialized high-quality cushions in the stands. Who knows, maybe there may be guys like you among those 5, said Krillin, who wanted to believe that the universe was big, especially when there is more than one. And that someday, maybe today, Broly could find his natural enemy. Something that isn't mathematically impossible, but in Broly's opinion. Ha 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 ha. Like me? Ha 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 ha. Wait, really? Wah 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 wah. Broly said as he tried to contain his laughter, although it was impossible. This was one of the best jokes he had heard in his life. And Krillin, somewhat offended, but not surprised by the answer, replied it wasn't necessary to be so sarcastic. I laugh because you didn't say something silly, at all. The only interesting guys on that team are 2. One is the extremely serious purple dude. And then there's that Saiyan girl over there. Let's just say we have a little in common. Although, very little, of course. Broly replied, pointing to Hidden Kale as he wiped the tears from his third eye. What? That girl? Everyone shouted in shock. Has the arrogant and narcissistic Broly just compared himself with another living being by saying they have things in common? In addition, what they both have in common is related to his power. This didn't look good, it didn't look good at all. They didn't know exactly what he meant by that, but it was certainly bad news for the representatives of their universe. What do you mean, Broly? Do you know her? Can we truly win? Almost everyone shouted, extremely scared upon hearing that ambiguous statement, and among them was Beerus, the most scared of all. No spoilers, Broly said as he made himself comfortable to sleep, ignoring the requests of his curious friends. And after leaving almost the entire audience terrified, with suspense and with a great cliffhanger. The participants had already finished their exams, which Goku almost failed, although even a 4-year-old would be able to pass it. The start of the tournament was imminent. And before Broly fell asleep until the interesting fight started, he came up with an idea that he already had in mind from home. I'll make things a little more interesting. And convenient for me. Goku. I have to tell you something. Broly said to Goku telepathically. Goku. I have to tell you something. Yes, I'm talking telepathically, to you and the others, Broly said telepathically to Goku, Vegeta, Ginger, Yam and Piccolo, although he silenced those who weren't Goku to avoid interruptions. Broly just wanted them to hear what he had to say. What do you want, Broly? Have you regretted not being able to participate? I'm sorry, but I'm the first, Goku said as if he were a child or a dog afraid that someone would dare to take his toy from him. Shut up and listen. It's important, Broly shouted telepathically. Sorry, Goku apologized for his childish attitude. You have to win all the matches without losing, Broly said solemnly as he dipped his churros in the hot chocolate. What? Why? Everyone in the telepathic conversation screamed telepathically, although only Goku and Goku were able to speak. Because I have bet, lie, that you will win all the fights, and you should know that I don't like to lose. Never. Broly said with a very unkind and gloomy smile, which only disguised a clear threat. Oh. They said upon hearing that worrying message. They must win at all costs. And also, for the good of all, only Goku had to fight. Obviously that made the others who weren't Goku very sad. But Broly, who wasn't entirely sure if Goku had understood what to do, tried to be a little more specific, adding certain incentives to motivate the former protagonist. So if you win, I will give you a great reward, a huge one. But if you lose or act like an idiot by overestimating yourself, that's not fighting seriously. He. Trust me, you'll regret it. You will excessively regret it. And not just you. I will punish everyone else with you. I will punish your friends with twice the severity. And to Vegeta with the quadruple. What? US too? That is unfair. Ginge, Yam and Piccolo shouted, this time not telepathically. Why always me? Vegeta screamed non-telepathically, frustrated at always being Broly's scapegoat. Okay. I get it. Goku said, miraculously erasing his typical stupid smile from his face after being threatened like that. Before he wanted to have fun and try things with the people of the other universe, however, now he had to exert himself to the maximum, beyond 100%, as if it were a fight to life and death. So his friends helped him remember that feeling. Kakaroto. Goku. As you lose a single combat, we will kill you. Piccolo, Ginger, Yam and Vegeta cheered him on at the same time in a threatening way, especially Vegeta. And Bulma, seeing the paranormal event that was happening before her eyes, that Vegeta, Yam, Ginger and Piccolo enthusiastically encouraged Goku to win each fight even though that implied that they wouldn't have the opportunity to fight. She activated her feminine intuition to find the origin of this oddity, a very easy, fast and obvious search. Broly, what did you tell them? That, if they hurry and finish this tournament soon, a barbecue awaits for them at our home. You know how much they like my food, said Broly, trying to find a convincing excuse. However, he failed miserably. Bulma realized right away that everything had been caused by him, so she said affectionately, honey, if you're going to lie to me, do it better please. I will sleep for a while. I'll wake up when the good stuff starts, said Broly, who resorted to the old and reliable strategic retreat. On another occasion everyone would have rebuked him for that intervening, abusive and even cowardly attitude. But not today. He has been very annoying all day, for which everyone appreciated that momentary tranquility. Although some didn't like so much that Broly went to sleep. This bastard. Sleeping in a moment as important as this. Beerus said, quite annoyed that someone showed so little interest in one of the events he was presiding over, especially if that someone had refused to participate and that person is also Broly. True, but Goku is incredibly motivated and focused. I've never seen him like this before, just like Vegeta and the others. Whis said, somewhat astonished. He had never seen these Saiyans behave like that. It was as if they were betting their life on this tournament, or else they wanted Goku to completely win that tournament. At the very least they care about my honor. I think I have been a bit strict with these guys. I will hit them a little less hard in the next training session. Beerus said, extremely moved upon seeing eager his punching bags had to beat his twin brother in this competition. A few minutes later. Dad. 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 Papa. Awake. Bra said as she shot a key sphere at Broly's face. Boom. Can't you wake me up like a normal person? Broly protested as he woke up. She hadn't done him any harm, it was a matter of protocol. Goku's combat with the Saiyan from Universe 6 begins, Bra said, who didn't even apologize for his original and violent way of waking up his father. Oh great, thank you sweetie. Has he fought well while I slept? Asked Broly, who quickly forgot his anger. Yes, he has done very well, he has finished the fighting quickly. Although the giant robot has caused problems and has entertained a bit fighting against that short Saiyan with hardly any muscles. He only knew how to transform into a Super Saiyan, Goten replied, who was very proud of his father's performance in this tournament. I understand. Those useless haven't been able to improve from that point. I really have to do everything myself. Anyway, let's see how Kale fights. Broly replied, disappointed with the progress of the Saiyans of Universe 6. Dad. Why did you say that combat with that girl would be interesting? Tell me please, Bra asked, pleading with her puppy eye technique for force her father to answer the question everyone wanted to know. She even rehearsed during the minutes that Broly was sleeping to increase the probability of success. Can't you wait a few minutes to find out yourself? Broly said as he covered her daughter's almost crying face with his tail and looked away. You know that I can't. Bra screamed as she tried to push her father's tail away for her attack to be effective. I'm sorry sweetie, but your dad doesn't make spoilers, he replied, hardening his heart as he looked away. What do you mean? You and your damn answer talker get all the series endings, even just by watching the first chapter. Bulma protested, bringing out some of her accumulated resentment, as every woman does. Do you still hold a grudge against me for that? It's been 18 months since that and I haven't done it again. Replied Broly, who believed that he had already apologized enough a long time ago. How long would she keep reminding him? I was interested in that show, Bulma insisted for the umpteenth time. How many times did she have to remind him? Why are women so spiteful? However, luckily for everyone, Bra ended that embarrassing show. Dad, Mom, shut up, the fight is already starting. And just like Bra said, which indicated Vegeta Jr. to sit with her despite Broly's disapproval. Kale had started his fight against Goku, who was looking at her seriously, since he detected that there was something strange with that almost adolescent female Saiyan. In the same way, Kale was even more alert due to the power that Goku had exhibited until now. Undoubtedly her opponent was incredibly powerful Saiyan despite not having transformed into Super Saiyan. She don't know about Broly's super body multiplication. So strong that she had even defeated Kaba with extreme ease, thus she couldn't suppress her power in the slightest. I wanted to avoid it because I lose control, but I have no other choice, Kale thought with obvious nervousness as she faced Goku, the mighty Saiyan from another universe while she transformed. What the hell? A transformation that made everyone jump out of his chair, including Beerus, who even seemed traumatized by the appearance of the teenager in front of him. No way! Everyone shouted once more time as they pointed at Kale and looked at Broly, playing to find the differences between them. Even Broly helped in that game by transforming into Legendary Super Saiyan so that the most idiots, who were the majority, could quickly find the differences. Green hair. Increase in size, hypermusculature. Power that increases exponentially without pause at an alarming rate. Piccolo said, scared and very much. His biggest nightmare was coming true and he had nowhere to run. It's like Mutant Roshi said as he pointed at both of them with his fingers. For the first time he was pointing out something in a woman other than her secondary or primary sexual characteristics. Broly, what's going on? That is the same transformation as yours, said Bulma, highly impressed and concerned to see the great resemblance between that hypertrophied teenager and her husband. Above all, she was worried about finding her something attractive despite being a woman. Certainly seeing the transformation of Kale aroused the amazement of everyone who knew Broly. Moreover, more than one started scratching their heads to try to understand what was happening. And obviously many of them began to come up with theories, each one more crazy and far-fetched than the other. However, only one of those idiots, Yamcha, dared to share his theory. It's very simple. Young Broly went to Universe 6, it was there when he found a female Saiyan who Pum. A very dangerous theory, so much so that he ended up embedded against the wall of the tournament facilities in a position known to all. Yamcha! Shouted Puar, who truly feared for the life of his master. As I have already explained, Universe 6 and 7 are twin brothers. In both there are Saiyans, Namekians, and there's even a planet Earth like the one we live on, although now they are all dead there. That's the reason for this tournament. Well, in the same way, in this universe there is also my counterpart. Someone who was born with the same mutant S cells that I have, and that's that girl over there. She is not my daughter. I only have eyes for my Bulma, Broly said, finally explaining what kind of relation Kale and him had. Especially emphasizing that she wasn't his daughter as he looked at Bulma. I already understand it. Does that mean that she has infinite power just like you? Bulma asked, who quickly dismissed Yamcha's absurd theory, since Broly had never given her a reason to suspect about his fidelity. In addition, she was more concerned right now about the possible implications of someone else in the multiverse having the same powers as her husband. That could be something horrible and dangerous, especially if your childhood friend was fighting against it. Yes, that's right, answered Broly, relieved that his wife didn't doubt even for a moment about his fidelity. Thanks to that, Yamcha would live one more day. Infinite power? That means Goku is in trouble, shouted Beerus, who didn't miss a detail of that whole conversation, since he was also interested in knowing the truth about that Saiyan. And the truth worried him excessively. He couldn't bear the idea of seeing Goku losing, that could mean seeing his brother happy, and he couldn't allow it. Yes and no, look at it for yourselves, Broly replied as he asked everyone to pay attention to the fight instead of looking at him. Although he really liked being the center of attention. So everyone began to pay attention once more to the combat between Goku and Kale, especially analyzing each of Kale's actions to find some weak point in that ultramuscular titan woman who seemed to destroy the world with each of his movements. And the first to realize any of the peculiarities was Rashi, thanks to his years of experience as a martial artist and being chased by enraged women. Has that girl become Berserker? That's right, just like normal S cells, the mutant S cells that Kale and I have are activated by anger. Normal S cells give a limited amount of power with the activation of a certain level of anger, which is more or less controllable as well as the power it gives. With training, it is possible to control that anger better and at the same time get more power out of those S cells. But with the mutant S cells, it is not like that. The power grows exponentially as well as the anger that generates that power, thus creating a vicious circle that makes us crazy super powerful, almost lacking in rationality beings who attack friends and enemies alike as if we were wild beasts, said Broly, explaining the factory defects of his own S cells. But you control yourself perfectly in that state. I have even seen you sleep transformed after getting angry about losing poker with Bra after promising not use cheats or abilities, said Bulma, remembering certain funny episodes of her married life. To which Broly proudly replied, "That's because I have great control of my power and mind for various genetic reasons, mainly the Jegan, and abilities acquired through a very hard and intelligent training to take advantage of my abilities at the same time that I have eliminated said defects. Although the first time I transformed I had a hard time controlling myself. Fortunately I transformed for the first time into Universe 6. I would be very sorry to have destroyed Universe 7 if I hadn't been able to control my anger." "Asshole. You released that anger on me," Kampa protested, who like his brother also paid attention to the conversation between the members of Universe 7. "As I was saying, unfortunately that young woman isn't as successful as me. You see, despite the difficulties and danger, Goku is more or less able to anticipate her crude movements. And also," Broly said as he pointed to the fight between Goku and hypertrophied Kale. A match in which Goku practically dodged all of Kale's wide, powerful, predictable, and hyper-destructive attacks. Pam. And then hit her when she left an opening, withdrawing temporarily and attacking again when possible, when suddenly. HaHaHa. Kale, who seemed to be suffering, unleashed a violent explosion of energy in all directions. An explosion that almost destroyed the ring and almost expelled Goku from it. "What was that explosion of power? Goku almost fell from the ring," said part of the public, who didn't expect that suddenly Berserker Kale would perform such an intelligent and almost victorious action. However, quickly the most observant of the group realized that this hadn't been a premeditated or favorable action for Kale. "Has she gotten weaker than before, or is it just my impression?" Piccolo said, who never lost sight of Kale's absurd increases in power, much less that extreme decrease in it. "Not only that, her muscles have gotten smaller," Rashi said, although he was also struck by the decrease in power, he especially noticed her aesthetics. "If I'm not mistaken, her body is unable to withstand so much power, so she is forced to expel it when it reaches the critical point. A critical point that, being blinded by anger, is unable to control correctly, so she becomes exhausted, loses control of her body, and also hurts herself a little." "I am right?" said Whis, who momentarily abandoned his cosmic cat to join the bleachers of Universe 7, where the most interesting conversations were taking place. "You have said it perfectly, Whis. It's nice not to have to explain everything myself," answered Broly, very happy that there are people around him with a minimum of reasoning ability and battle sense. "But, what if you don't unleash that power, Dad?" "Mr. Broly?" asked Vegeta Jr., who had a momentary slip. "A slip that didn't go unnoticed by Broly. What did you call me?" "Most likely he will die. If you seal a container and keep filling it with water, it will end up exploding. That is why she instinctively expels that power, albeit clumsily," said Vados, who also joined the stands of Universe 7 with his brother. It was more entertaining to be there than with her cat, and the food was better. "Hey! Where are you going?" Beerus and Kampa protested upon seeing that their servants had abandoned them. Therefore, without paying attention to them, everyone else kept talking about Kale and his S-cells. And one of the most interesting questions that came up was, "Then, Papa, do you also have to expel power in this way so as not to die?" Bra asked, worried about her father's life. Obviously this was an extremely interesting question. Both for those who were his friends, who didn't want Broly to die, and for his enemies, who were many and were eager to know the mortal weaknesses of their powerful arch-enemy, although many of these enemies were also his friends. However, of course Broly, as always, broke the hope of his enemies, telling them that nothing they did against him would be effective under normal circumstances. It would have to be like this, but as you know, I'm not normal at all. I can maintain control while I'm transformed, so I can better dose my power and energy, releasing it in a controlled way in combat so as not to reach that point of excessive accumulation. In addition, I developed a skill that allows me to send excess energy to another dimension to take advantage of it later, without forgetting my famous Broly super body multiplication. If to all this we add that I have trained my body to brutal limits, I have modified it to better adapt to all my changes, and I am also immortal. No, there is no danger that I will die by my own power or that they will become a disadvantage. I have conquered all the advantages and weaknesses of my S-cells. Oh. Too bad, almost all the Z-Warriors, Beerus and Kampa sighed, and especially Vegeta, very sad to hear that they couldn't use Broly's own mutant S-cells against Broly. And those are some disadvantages that it seems that Goku has understood, said Broly while pointing to the combat again. Boom. Plash. Clack. Kale is out of the ring. The winner is Son Goku, from Universe 7. Said the referee, ending the match. I see, he's been pulling her to the edges and waited for the precise moment when she would release her energy. At that moment, while he was being pushed by the shock wave, he teleported in front of her. Just when Kale was weak and disoriented to push her out of the ring with a simple kick. Without a doubt the most efficient way to win was said, explaining in detail the final moments of the comment between Goku and Kale, explaining the onomatopoeias that Meralman had written. Obviously to avoid representing the combat, since Whis was going to explain it anyway, I am a rascal. I'm surprised that Goku has come up with a strategy like that, said Beerus, who joined the stands of Universe 7 so as not to be alone. Don't underestimate Goku's intelligence, at least when it comes to fighting, Broly replied, showing some respect for one of his childhood heroes. Although right now, Goku was the least of his problems. It seems that your universe has problems, sister. Whis said, pointing to the ruins of the ring in which HaHaHa Gods in which Kale, who was still transformed, continued to fight against Goku despite having lost. In her state, she was unable to reason or acknowledge that she had lost by falling from a completely shattered ring. The only way to defeat her was to kill her or knock her unconscious. And until she was defeated, her only instinct would be to crush Goku, who tried by all means avoid her attacks. If contestant Kale continues to fight after losing, the Universe 6 will be disqualified, said the referee, denouncing this unsportsmanlike behavior and its consequences. What? Kampa yelled, outraged by that rule. Did that mean that Hit wouldn't have a chance to beat Goku and the rest of his brother's team? Did that mean that his entire team would be disqualified? Although unlike Kampa, Beerus was very happy with that referee decision. HaHaHa. That would be fun, don't you think, Kampa? What the hell are you doing, Kale? Do you want to be destroyed? Kampa yelled as he pointed his hand at Kale, ready to use his Hakai before his team lost for breaking the rules. Obviously this assassination attempt wasn't well received between the whole audience, especially Broly, since this partially interfered with one of his plans. I think I should be the one to step in to stop my female version from another universe, but that could compromise my plan, so should I ask Hit to take care of this? No, that would be even more inadvisable. Anyway. So while Kale kept causing dread trying to kill Goku, like almost everyone in this show, ha, Broly teleported behind her. Calm down, girl. And as if she were a kidnapper or rapist, Broly put a handkerchief on Kale's face, and she fainted instantly, ending her transformation. What was that? Asked all the public. They couldn't believe that there is a drug capable of knocking out such a powerful being. Where can I buy that? Asked the Galactic King. Where could they get that drug? If they could mass manufacture it, they would gain a very useful weapon to stop super powerful villains. He had to get that drug for the Galactic Patrol at any price. Broly brand chloroform, extremely effective against non-Broly Saiyans. I had to make it up when Bra wouldn't let us sleep at night due to her crying when she was a baby. Broly replied, explaining the origin of one of his inventions while taking the unconscious Kale with him. An origin that made everyone present laugh who understood what Broly was referring to. Ha. Therefore everyone laughed out loud except the little kids, Goku and Broly. Please. Bulma protested, very embarrassed. Daddy, please. Bra protested, very embarrassed. He always has to do unnecessary things. Beerus protested, who hoped to win his brother quickly, but of course, Broly always had to screw up his plans. Don't worry, I'll take care of her, she's my version from another universe after all, I have to take responsibility. You can continue with the tournament, said Broly, ending his speech. GRRRJJJJ. Referee announces the next combat. Beerus yelled at the referee as he tried unsuccessfully to hide how angry he was with Broly's intervention. Well done, Broly. You have finally done something good for me. Kampa yelled, thanking for the first time that Broly existed. And while Broly left the ring, which was being rebuilt by Vados and Whis, with Kale under his arm, he warned Goku, pointing to his next rival, stay focused Goku, your next opponent is someone very special. Really? I'm even more excited than before. Goku said with extreme enthusiasm as he looked anxiously at Hit. And like Goku, Broly also looked at Hit, but unlike Goku, Broly talked telepathically with him. Hit, you know what to do. Yes, Broly-sama, Hit replied telepathically to his boss, indicating that he would execute the orders he previously received from him without any problems. A telepathic conversation that went unnoticed by everyone. Obviously no one could intrude on the private channel created by Broly with which he could communicate with his subjects and temporary workers of his own dimension. However, the slight change in Hit and Broly's aura and composure from having eye contact didn't go unnoticed by Whis. The fight between Goku and Kale had ended with Goku's victory. With this, Universe 6 accumulated 4 defeats and 0 victories. A single more defeat would mean the total and absolute defeat of Universe 6. Therefore, while Whis and Vados repaired the ring, Kampa was giving a motivating and hopeful speech to his team to encourage them in the next fight and not feel hopeless about previous losses. Damn. Damn. You have lost all the battles against a single enemy. You are all useless. You deserve being dead. Kampa yelled, expressing how satisfied he was with the team that Vados had recruited for him. So much satisfaction felt by this incredible result that he was about to reward them with a dense Hakai in their faces. However, luckily for the participants of Universe 7, in that team there was a responsible adult with the ability to reason. I don't think that's fair to them, Hit said, ending with that phrase Kampa's murderous intentions, even though Hit was a murderer. What do you mean by that, Hit? Kampa said, very confused, despite being a dude who had lived billions of years and is one of the most powerful gods in the entire universe. Proving that being powerful and living long doesn't conflict with being extremely stupid. That guy is without a doubt one of Broly's disciples. I think you already know what that means. Hit replied, trying to make him remember what Broly did to them years ago. And they were also being trained by my brother, if you remember. It seems that you underestimated them a lot when they were wearing those training suits, Kampa-sama added Vados, who agreed with Hit's observation. Could they really blame new recruits they didn't know before for not being able to compete against the students of the multiversal abomination Broly, an angel and a Hakashin? This competition was never fair from the start, but the idiot just didn't notice. And that was something that even the stupid and impulsive Kampa could understand if someone clearly explained it to him, so he reluctantly gave up the idea of killing them, for now. Damn. Hit, can you handle him? I cannot use my killing techniques in this tournament and I am facing a monster trained by the greatest monster. But it will be a fun fight, Hit answered as he advanced towards the ring with his hands in his characteristic pockets, hinting that he wasn't 100% sure of winning. Meanwhile, in the stands of Universe 7. Due to the good performance of Goku in this tournament, in which he concentrated on fighting properly rather than playing the idiot overestimating himself too much. The whole audience was in a great mood, they just needed to win another match to have a landslide victory. An incredible achievement. A single fighter from his universe would defeat the best fighters of an entire opposing universe. That was without a doubt the result that everyone wanted to see. However, not everyone were carried away by this tribalism and treated this matter with rationality. So much is to worry about the last opponent they should face now. That guy, he seems strong, said Krillin, who like everyone else was trying to measure his power level, and of course his aura and energy seemed extremely powerful. He didn't seem to have as brutal a power as Kale's, but even so, his attitude, way of moving and presence alerted all the fighters there that Hit isn't a common dude. He's very dangerous. Broly, do you know him? He has been looking at you all the time and he has talked about you a lot. And I think that on some occasion you have also looked at him as if you knew him, asked Bulma, who unlike the rest wasn't specialized in detecting the power or fighting ability of others. Instead, she had developed a sixth sense that told her when something strange was happening with her husband. And that sixth sense wasn't wrong this time. I like that you look at me so closely, Bulma, but I do know him. After all, with this guy I had the most difficult fight I have ever had in my life, Broly replied, unaware of the storm that these words would unleash. Why? Everyone shouted as if those were the words that announced the end of the universe. The most difficult combat of Broly's life? Was that guy that strong? That meant Goku is in trouble. Everyone from the stand screamed in panic again. And my Dragon Balls and Big Brother pride too. Yelled Beerus, demonstrating what their motivations were. Calm down. That was when I was about Bra's age and it was before I could transform, neither I had all the abilities I have now. Right now I could defeat him with a single blink. Although during our fight I managed to transform and with that defeat him with extreme ease, Broly said, trying to reassure his upset friends and family. Uff. You scared us, everyone replied, who were hyperventilating from the fright from before. So Goku has a chance to beat him too? Chi-Chi asked, who from time to time worried about her husband. Although very little, for years she only saw him as a bad source of income. Goku's raw power is greater than Hit's. However, winning or losing depends all on Goku's and on his ability to understand, adapt and counterattack Hit's characteristic ability, Broly answered without being 100% specific in anything. Characteristic ability? What kind of ability did Hit have that he can't counteract the raw power margin between him and Goku? No spoilers? Bulma and Bra asked. No spoilers, Broly replied while hardening his heart and mind, since Bulma were using the sexy poopy eyes attack to tempt him to confess. And they were about to achieve her goal. It seems that Bra learned this trick from her mother. And while Bulma continued to tempt her husband and Bra tried to learn that technique, the fight between Goku and Hit started. Why? Hit seemed to teleport in an extremely efficient way, with which he could surpass Goku, anticipating his attacks. What is happening? How can that Hit be so fast? Asked the general public, who had no fucking idea about Hit's skill. Moreover, Broly, who could no longer resist the combined attack of Bra and Bulma, revealed the truth earlier than expected. It's not speed, it's his special ability. A skill known as time skip. Timki skip? What is this? Asked the illiterates with a lack of imagination. The explanation of his ability is somewhat complicated, so it would take several minutes or maybe hours to explain it in detail, especially considering the number of illiterates per square centimeter who is listening to me. So I will make an imprecise explanation, but practical. He can stop time for several tenths of a second, in which he can move freely in that stop time, but without being able to interact with others. Broly replied kindly as he materialized a computer screen to graphically show Hit's ability to make it easier to understand. Manipulating time. I'm surprised he's got the same ability as me, said Whis, one of the few who didn't need Broly's video to understand Hit's ability. So you know what is the way to defeat him? Shall we tell him? Vegeta Jr. asked, that unlike his father he didn't hate Goku or anything like that, he felt the colors of Universe 7 and wanted them to win overwhelmingly. No, that would be cheating. Besides, it is likely that he realizes himself, Broly replied as he separated Bra from Vegeta Jr. subtly. And while Bulma growled at him for what he had just done, the combat continued. And Goku, who until now had been on the defensive, taking hit after hit from Hit without being able to do anything. Pam. Pluu. He was finally able to counter-attack. And not just once. Pam. Pluu. Pam. Pluu. But 3 times in a row. This was clearly no fluke. Goku had found a way to counter Hit's ability, and this was something that our dear assassin didn't like. How did you do that? Hit asked, somewhat surprised, but not much. He was already aware of the kind of person he was up against and what he was capable of, but still he didn't expect him to find his secret so quickly. You can jump forward 0.1 seconds in time, right? All I did was predict where you'd be 0.1 seconds after you vanished, Goku said, who explained everything without leaving a single detail. Why does that idiot have to explain everything to his opponent? He has to learn a little from his son, Broly asked rhetorically out loud, and with good reason. Now Hit had a clue on how to counter his counterattack. If Goku had shut up, he might not have discovered it, or it would have taken longer. Fucking shonen characters. Now that I know your trick, I'll be able to fight properly, Goku said, confident of being able to defeat him now that he had gotten used to his ability. But as always, overconfidence was the greatest weakness of our childhood hero, and Hit let him know you are too presumptuous. Do you really think my limit is 0.1 seconds? After my loss to Broly, I have been training like crazy. And once the bragging ended. Pam. Crash hey. Prom. Pyuyuwak. Both began to fight frantically, hitting each other, dodging and blocking each other hundreds of times. However, Goku seemed to be the one dominating the battle now, unlike a few minutes ago. Incredible. In an instant, he's predicting dozens of attacks and staying ahead of them. Shin said, fascinated with the skill of those two mortals and embarrassed by his uselessness. They could go on like this forever without reaching any end. Said Fuwa, another god who had no fucking idea of combat, as useless as his cousin from another universe. And seeing that Goku still had the advantage in this fight. Kompa, from whom someone would expect a bit of analytical ability at least when fighting, since that was his only virtue, he said like a fool without self-control, hey Vados, this is getting us nowhere. So Vados was forced to explain to him and the audience who really had the upper hand in that situation, don't fret, Kompa-sama. Hit barely uses any stamina for his time skip. On the other hand, his opponent is forced to think and react at incredibly high speeds. They simply keep us this exchange, it will be the Saiyan who depletes his stamina first. Besides, haven't you heard what Hit said earlier? And as always used to happen after this kind of explanation. What that guy or woman said in the explanation happened. And in this case, Hit, who until now was more or less even with Goku. Pum. He returned to control the pace of the battle, countering Goku's foresight in some clever way that surely some idiot wouldn't be able to understand. Goku was no longer able to attack, not even to defend himself, he had become unable to predict Hit's movements. And obviously someone would ask about what had just happened in the hope that someone smarter could explain it to him. Goku can no longer predict his movements? What is happening? Asked Yamcha, one of the official idiots of this great franchise. You have heard him before, 0.1 is not his limit. From what I have been able to observe, his longest jump has been 0.5 seconds, Whis replied, since being much more powerful, observant and intelligent than Hit could understand and perfectly evaluate the ability of Hit. But shouldn't Goku be able to predict his movements anyway? I know that predicting the next 0.1 is easier than the next 0.5, but it shouldn't be that different. Zinjaber asked, that since she is a little girl the author forgave her for not knowing how to reason as experienced fighters. The problem is when he varies his time skip distance continuously. The first kick was 0.1 seconds, the next punch was 0.3, the next was 0.5, then 0.2. And so constantly, it isn't surprising that Goku is incapable of calculating his next move, much less being able to react to it. Whis replied once again, who was always willing to clear up the doubts of our protagonist group. That means that my dad doesn't have a chance to win? Goten asked, worried. Very few times he could be proud of his father, and today was one of those few times. He wanted him to defeat all the representatives of a whole universe. Until he manages to stop him and counterattack, hardly. Whis replied, sentencing that discussion and possibly the result of the fight. Damn Broly! Why did you motivate that guy to improve? Beerus protested, angered by how Broly's intervention years ago had complicated things for Goku now. Well done Broly! Well done Hit! Kampa cheered for the opposite reason. These guys are retarded. But you still forget to mention something, Whis said Broly as he walked towards Whis, leaving a long silence to create a great expectation among the audience. An audience that wanted to know at once what Broly meant, which finally answered after a few seconds. In this reality, skills like these aren't of much use if you use them against someone who vastly surpasses you in raw power. In this reality? Whis thought, surprised by that choice of words that went unnoticed by everyone else. And as always happened, in a timely manner, Goku got Broly's message despite not having heard him. I see. I will have to use everything I know. At this point, he could no longer reserve power or energy. He had to give everything in this fight, or else he would lose, and what is worse, Broly would punish them all. Therefore, Kaioken X20. Goku activated his Kaioken X20. This is a technique that is incompatible with a Super Saiyan transformation. The Kaioken Super Saiyan Blue never existed, that was invented by Toei Animation. However, due to Broly's multiplication and fuse technique, right now Goku had a power greater than that of a Super Saiyan Blue in base state. And by multiplying that brutal power by almost 20, his combat capacity soared in a disproportionate way. However, that increase in power didn't intimidate Hit. It was useless to increase his power and speed if he couldn't react correctly to his attacks. An increase in power won't be able to Plaska beat me. But Hit couldn't finish his sentence, or at least couldn't finish it standing up, as he fell on his ass due to Goku's surprising and unexpected blow. Plap! As his ass fell right out of the ring. What the hell? Kampa shouted, confused, indignant and devastated. Goku just hit Hit? And had he thrown him out of the ring? How had he done that? How had he been able to predict Hit's unpredictable attacks? That's what everyone wanted to know, including Beerus, who kindly asked Broly, who might have the answer. Broly, spill the hey. However, Broly glared at Beerus, indicating that he wouldn't answer with that lack of manners. Most likely he would give him a beating instead. So Beerus, with good judgment, asked another person. No. Wise, explain please. After increasing his power to the maximum and using the Kaioken, Goku has overcome with a wide margin the power differential between him and Hit. A unique ability such as this only works at maximum efficiency on those equal to or lesser than the user's own power and level. As Broly spoiled before, or as you could see years ago when Gohan tried to transfer his injuries to Beerus-sama with his antithesis ability. His ability was not entirely effective on Goku. Whis replied to his cat, proving once again that he was one of the few intelligent characters in this franchise. Ha ha ha. It wasn't a spoiler, it happened with Gohan, but this way I kept you in tension. You should have guessed it, you are a very inattentive fandom, said Broly, criticizing his companions in a somewhat strange way, which contained technicalities that they didn't understand. That doesn't matter, the important thing is that I have won. Referee, declare my universe the winner. Beerus yelled once his curiosity was sated thanks to Whis and Broly. It was time to declare himself champion before his brother protested and or fled with the award. Oh. Okay. CH. Challenger Hit has been removed from the ring. Goku is your victor. I hereby declare the 7th universe winners. The referee announced even though Kampa was killing him with his eyes. Yeah. The whole Universe 7 screamed for the crushing victory they had achieved. They were so happy that it even seemed that they had won something, criticism dedicated to sports fans. It was an incredible match, Hit, but I wish I could fight you in a match where we don't have so many restrictions, Goku said as he held out his hand to help Hit get up, demonstrating to Universe 6 the flawless sportsmanship of Universe 7. Maybe we will have an opportunity like that in the future, Hit replied, accepting Goku's kindness. Hit had been defeated, but he didn't seem to be upset with the result. He had finally been able to fight a strong guy as well as interesting since a long time ago. After all, only ones he could have fun with at this point were his co-workers. For him that was already enough reward, he had no reason to be angry. Unlike others. Hey Hit. You said you could defeat him. What the hell happened? Kampa yelled, extremely angry with the utter defeat of his entire universe at the hands of a single idiot. I never said that I would win. Hey, hurry up and take me home, answered Hit without giving importance to Kampa's protests. At no point did he guarantee that he could win and didn't owe that guy anything. Why the hell should he give him some explanation? On the contrary, there was no term that forced him to win the competition, they only rewarded him in the case of winning. There was no clause in the event of failing his mission. But something as simple as that didn't cross the mind of the impulsive Kampa. He was angry, very angry, so much so that he even began to think that wouldn't be such a bad idea to kill Hit and the entire team as he tried to do before the last fight. MIAU. Maybe this way he could be satisfied, since screaming like a hysteric while kicking the ground was only making him more furious. Hey, Kampa. Beerus said, who without warning appeared behind his brother to reassure him. However, seeing how his brother, the one who always beat him in everything, had come to show off put him in even a worse mood, so he screamed even louder than before. You. What do you want? Don't you see that? Hey, Kampa, you retard. Incited Beerus, who now seemed even more upset than he despite having won. But Kampa was still in his world of absolute failure, although at least he knew how to admit defeat. Yeah. I know, Beerus. I'll give you the stupid super Dragon Balls. Not that. Look over there, you moron. Beerus yelled very, very upset as he grabbed his brother by the head so that he would look where he was pointing his finger. Is it really appropriate for you to be pointing at him? Whis asked coldly, as this was a teacher of etiquette for nobles. And it wasn't surprising that attitude part of Whis. And even Beerus, since the person Beerus had just pointed out, whom Kampa had ignored and displayed an attitude unbecoming of a god of destruction, was Ze. Zen. Zeno-sama. Finally. The alien, subnormal, not so evil, and with excessive power Stewie has appeared. Broly thought as he watched as the actual most powerful being of this reality appeared in front of him. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/Kaioshin. I tend to polls that decide important plot stuff in my P at Trian. Many thanks to my awesome patrons. Ben Phillips.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.